Hello everybody. Hello Erica in the front row waving at me for moral support, thank you. I don't think there are any big willies in my presentation, but you're welcome to keep your eyes open, and if you spot one, please put your hand up. I'm sure we'd all like to know. So hello, I am Myfanwy Tristram. I like drawing. What I like drawing most of all is comics. And I'm here today to talk about the Draw the Line project, which is a comics project that started very, very small and then grew up into something bigger than I could have ever imagined. Now, anyone who draws, sounds like we've got a few artists in here today, anyone who draws knows that generally speaking it's a very solitary pursuit. And I find my time for drawing by getting up very early in the morning. I'm often the only one awake in the house, and I switch on the radio to keep me company. And I'd like you to cast your minds back to 2016. Now, 2016 notoriously is the moment at which the universe is split and we got thrown into some bizarre parallel universe where the politics were all really toxic and horrible. So I was sitting at my desk drawing comics and listening to the news, and the news was all about Brexit and Donald Trump and the refugee crisis. And normally at this point in the talk I say, oh, and it doesn't matter which side your politics are on when you talk about Brexit or Trump or whatever, they're really divisive. But I think I'm quite safe in saying to this audience, Brexit, oh God, Trump. So there I was, sitting at my desk, drawing away, and to be honest, I started to feel like my hobby, drawing, was pretty trivial when I could have been out there doing some really important things, doing something practical to try and save the world. But here's something that got me thinking. Just about that time, I went to see a talk by this guy, Olivier Couglet. Don't know if anyone here has heard of Olivier Couglet. He put out this fantastic book, which I highly recommend that you rush home and buy, not on Amazon, but from any other dealer, as soon as you get home, Escaping Wars and Waves. And what Olivier Couglet did was that he travelled to various places where refugees could be found in camps, sat down, had a good old conversation with them, got to know them as human beings, and drew while he was talking. And as you can see, there's all these little bits and bobs of conversation, and as you read through this book, you really get to know these people, and you start to see the refugee crisis not as a big political movement, but as a gathering of human beings, right? You get to see the human side of these refugees, and you get to really understand it's not just about statistics. And actually, once I started thinking about it, I started realising it's complete nonsense to say that comics can't make a political point. I mean, after all, we all open up our newspapers every day and we see political cartoons in there. And here's another example, Kate Evans, who used to live in Brighton and lived in Brighton at the time that she made this. And this is a comic that was made about the tree protesters at the time she was protesting against the Newbury bypass, and that's a very good example of how comics can be used for political ends. So, I realised, or perhaps you could say that I remembered, that comics can have a power, and that was the seed of a thought that resulted in Draw the Line. And this is a project that in the end it brought together comic artists. In the beginning it brought together a few comic artists that I knew. I thought it might be a handful, maybe 4 or 5 of my friends would like to get involved. But what happened was, as soon as I started talking about it to them, they talked to more comic artists that they knew, and they talked to more that they knew, and in the end we had 114 artists in 16 different countries, and each of them was depicting one positive political action that anyone could take when they don't like the current political climate. I'll just go back. Sorry. So we divided them up. We divided them into different sections, and they're all on the website. So you can see, for example, there are actions you can take if you've got no money to spend, but you still want to do something positive. There are actions you can do if you want to help homeless people or if you want to do something for the environment. Actions you can do if you've got an artistic bent. And then, of course, because children often hear their parents talking about these worrying issues and they're worried for themselves, there's loads and loads of actions that kids can take as well. And I'll share the URL at the end so you can see where to see them all. So what I'm going to do now, having given you that introduction, I'm just going to bombard you with lots and lots of the different actions. This is a selection, bear in mind, there are over 100 on the website. And maybe, as you look through them, you could pick one for yourself and you could think, I'll do that tomorrow. Make a little difference to the world. So we started with small ones, the kind of political actions that anyone might think of when you say, well, what can I do as a small person? Things like signing a petition. This one is illustrated by Nicholas Sputnik Miller. It's a beautiful illustration, one of my favourites. And it shows the idea that really you might feel like you're only taking one small action, but when lots and lots of people take that one small action, it can have a real result. And in this country, if you get 100,000 signatures on a petition, then your issue is debated in Parliament. So we're very lucky to have that right. And a recent example that you all might remember is the Revoke Article 50 petition, and that got 6 million signatures. Another one that everybody might easily think of is writing to your MP. This one is drawn by Simon Russell. If you don't like the way that things are politically, you should tell your representatives, otherwise how do they know? Sometimes you have to tell them again and again, tell them multiple times. So there's plenty of actions like that for beginners who might be wondering how to take the very first step in activism. But some of the actions are a bit more ambitious, like this one. So for example, if you or your community wanted to help look after a refugee family, that's obviously a really big thing to do. There's lots and lots of guidance and help on the internet, so we made sure on the website to include links to all of that extra information. And this beautiful image is by Karen Rubens and shows refugee birds being welcomed by native birds. So earlier I mentioned kids. Yes, they can feel scared and powerless too. So there's lots of actions that they can take. Simple things like wearing a badge and talking to people when they come and ask what it means. Making a joke even, or making a zine. Consuming less plastic. I think kids are often more enthusiastic about that sort of thing than us adults. Reading books that have diverse casts of characters in them. Planting things for bees and so forth. And of course you can make your political actions fun. So this one by Fumio Obata was inspired by Hanover, which is an area in Brighton. How many people know the Hanover area of Brighton? Yeah, so if you know it's like a grid of little terraced houses. I don't know how many streets there are, but there must be, 20, 30, maybe more streets. Anyway, they all had a competition. Each street decided on one thing that they could collect. So one street was collecting lentils, one street was collecting beans, rice and so on. And then they had a competition to see who could collect the most, and they gave them all to a food bank. This one depicts casserole clubs. With a casserole club, you simply cook an extra portion of your dinner and you go and deliver it to somebody nearby who might be feeling lonely or isn't able to cook for themselves. And this was the only illustration that was sewn rather than drawn. This is by Jacqueline Nichols, and she was making a point about giving up buying fast fashion, making your own clothes. So, once we'd thought of all the obvious ideas, we did a bit of research to find political actions where people had got a bit more creative. So for example, if you've got a bit of money, or you can do a crowdfund, why not hire a billboard for your political message? Now anyone can do this. You don't have to be a big brand. You don't have to buy billboards right across the country. You can buy just one. You may have heard of Led by Donkeys, who have been doing this to great effect with anti-Brexit messaging. It doesn't have to be political. There was a crowdfunder a few years ago where they raised money to replace all the adverts in a tube station with pictures of kittens. And I very, very happily donated to that cause. So not all of the actions require money, some of them just require time. This is a picture by Zara Slattery, who is depicting the idea of a community garden. Community gardens are great because they create fellowship as well as giving you lots of fresh fruit and vegetables. You get to know your neighbours. They lower your carbon footprint because you're not buying food from around the world. And they may even provide a nice habitat for wildlife. This one depicts a poster that was printed out and given out for free, or you can download it from the internet. This was made by a printer in Portland, Oregon, in the USA. Portland was a sanctuary city, so it was refusing to cooperate with the government immigration laws, and you could put up this poster to make your workplace or your library or whatever into a safe space. Here's one to say that you can suggest to your local cafe or restaurant that they donate their leftovers to the homeless each night. And this one by Jamie Huxtable, this shows a wall of kindness, and apparently there was one of these operating in Hove until not too long ago. It's simply some hooks that somebody has fixed onto a wall outdoors, and then if you have spare coats or clothes that you don't need anymore, you can hang them up, and anybody who needs them can take them. And now on to the really, really creative stuff. So this one depicts craftivism. Craftivism is the act of using craft to make your political points. So for example, you can see the work of Sarah Corbett. And what she did was she stood outside a Marks & Spencer board meeting with these beautifully embroidered handkerchiefs, and she gave one of these handkerchiefs to each board member as they walked into the meeting. And they actually persuaded that meeting to make a change to the wages that they pay their staff, so it got them the living wage. And now I think this is my very favourite of all, the Raging Grannies. Has anyone heard of the Raging Grannies before? So the Raging Grannies are chapters of elderly women, started in the USA and now they're all over the world, and they use their innocuous looks to gain entry into places where protesters would not normally be allowed. So for example, they can be let into board meetings, where they then sing satirical songs and generally create havoc. And apparently they got into an arms fair and started singing lullabies to the nuclear warheads. Good for them. Kate Charlesworth depicts shop dropping. Shop dropping is the opposite of shoplifting. So with shoplifting, you remove something from a shop. Shop dropping, you leave something behind. And in this case, they're sewing labels in to say that the clothes may have been made in sweatshops. So I should say at this point, some of the ideas depicted in Draw the Line may not be strictly legal. We wash our hands of actually recommending that you do them, and we leave it up to you. We are merely stating that these ideas exist in the world. And talking of illegal actions, back to Kate Evans. So I showed her work at the beginning. She was the one who went up the tree at the Newbury bypass protest. And she obviously hasn't changed at all in the intervening years, because she donated this picture based on the suffragettes, basically reminding us that if the law is wrong, let's break it. So that is just a taste of the Draw the Line project. As I said, there are 100 more comics showing you ideas for political actions, big actions and small actions. Why not have a browse, make a point of picking one of them up and making the world a better place tomorrow. You can find us at drawthelinecomics.com. By the way, I should say that if you run any kind of charity or organisation that needs images, all of these are available under Creative Commons. That means anyone can pick these images up and reuse them for any non-commercial purpose. So you're very welcome to use them as posters, leaflets, whatever you want. And just finally, I would say that we really want to make this into a print book. So it's all on the website now. Our next aim is to get it into bookshops, and there are two reasons for that. We are crowdfunding, and once we've reached our target, then half of all the money will go to the charity Help Refugees. So the artists themselves aren't getting any of the money at all. The rest of the money goes to Unbound, which is our publishing platform. And the other reason that we really want this to happen is basically we think once it's in all the high street bookshops, then it won't just reach the woke people, it will reach the man in the street, the woman in the street, the people who may have thought they could never be a political person or take a political action. So if you are interested in that, I've got postcards, please come and find me. I'm sitting in the front row there, or you can just make a note of the URL. So that is that. We are on all the social media. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you got some good ideas from that.